While closing up the convenience store, I found someone hiding in the back room. It was late, and I was exhausted, ready to go home. The store was empty, or so I thought. As I went to the back to lock up, I noticed the door to the storage room slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there he was, a man crouched behind some boxes. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I yelled, heart pounding. The man looked up, startled, and bolted past me, running out of the store before I could react. Shaken, I locked the door and called the police, but they didn't find him. Over the next few nights, strange things started happening at the store and at home. It began with small stuff. Items in the store would be out of place when I arrived for my shift, and the cash register would be open even though I knew I had closed it. At home, my things started to move around. My keys would be on the kitchen table when I was sure I'd left them by the door, and my shoes would be lined up neatly, a thing I never did. I tried to rationalize it, thinking I was just tired and not paying attention, but the feeling that someone was messing with me wouldn't go away. One night, I got home from work and found my front door slightly open. I was sure I had locked it. I walked in cautiously, calling out, but there was no answer. Everything seemed normal until I noticed my living room. My furniture had been rearranged. The couch was on the opposite wall. The coffee table moved to the corner. It was like someone had been in my house, moving things around for fun. I called the police again, but they didn't find any evidence of a break-in. They suggested it might be someone I knew playing a prank, but I couldn't think of anyone who would do that. I started to feel paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, checking my locks multiple times. The next few days at the store were even worse. More items were misplaced, and sometimes I'd hear faint noises in the back room, like someone shuffling around, but when I checked, no one was there. One night, while counting the day's earnings, I heard a loud thud from the storage room. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously went to investigate. The room was a mess, boxes knocked over, shelves emptied, but no sign of the intruder. I decided to install a camera in the store and at home, hoping to catch whoever was behind this. Reviewing the footage at the store showed nothing unusual. No one came in after hours, and the objects seemed to move on their own. At home, it was the same. I'd see my things being moved, but no one was there doing it. The final straw came one night when I got home to find a note on my kitchen table. It simply said, "I've been here." That's when I realized this wasn't just some prank. Someone was stalking me, getting into my house and the store without leaving a trace. I couldn't take it anymore. I moved out of my apartment and quit my job at the convenience store. I never found out who it was or how they were getting in, but the experience left me constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if they'd find me again. The fear of not knowing who was behind it or why they chose me was the worst part, and it's something I'll never forget. While working at the convenience store, a man walked in and didn't leave. It was late, and the store was empty except for me. I was used to the quiet nights, but this guy made me uneasy. He came in, looked around, and then just stood by the shelves without picking anything up. I kept an eye on him while stocking the drinks. Minutes passed, and he still hadn't moved. I approached him, asking if he needed help, but he just shook his head and continued standing there. It was weird, but I figured he might just be indecisive. After about 20 minutes, He finally picked up a pack of gum and brought it to the counter. As I rang him up, he stared at me without blinking. His eyes were unsettling, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I handed him his change, and he moved to the back of the store again, not leaving. I tried to focus on my tasks, but I kept glancing at him. He was pacing slowly now, occasionally stopping to look at random items. I considered calling the police, but since he hadn't done anything threatening, I decided against it. I didn't want to overreact. Suddenly, the lights flickered. I checked the switches, but everything seemed fine. The man was still pacing, seemingly unfazed by the flickering lights. A moment later, the security camera monitor went blank. I tapped the screen, but it wouldn't come back on. This was starting to feel like a bad horror movie. Then, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from my home security app saying the cameras had gone offline. This was too much of a coincidence. I called my roommate to check if everything was all right at home, but there was no answer. I sent a text asking him to call me back ASAP. Back at the store, the man had stopped pacing and was now staring at the security camera in the corner. I felt a surge of anger and fear. "Hey, you need to leave," I said, trying to sound assertive. He turned to me, those unnerving eyes locking onto mine. He nodded slowly and walked out without saying a word. I quickly locked the door behind him, my hands shaking. The lights flickered one last time before going back to normal. I took a deep breath and tried calling my roommate again. This time, he picked up. "Hey, is everything okay at home?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, why?" "I'm just watching TV," he replied, sounding confused. I explained about the cameras going offline and the strange man at the store. My roommate checked the cameras and said they were working fine now. It must have been a temporary glitch. I felt a bit relieved but still uneasy. The rest of the night was uneventful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the man had somehow caused the malfunctions. When my shift ended, I went home and double-checked all the locks and cameras. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't get the man's stare out of my mind. The next few nights at the store were quiet, but I was always on edge, expecting him to walk in again. He never did, but the experience left me paranoid and jumpy. I started wondering if he'd show up again, or if it was just a one-time creepy encounter. Working the night shift at the convenience store had never bothered me before, but now I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next strange thing to happen. The man who wouldn't leave had left a lasting impression, making me question every malfunction and every shadow. While stocking shelves at the convenience store, I found a note. It was late, and the store was empty. I was putting cans on the top shelf when a piece of paper fluttered down from behind the products. Curious, I picked it up. The note was handwritten and said, "I'm watching you." I looked around, but there was no one in sight. It had to be a prank. I shrugged it off and continued working, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I finished my shift and went home, telling myself it was just a joke. The next night, I was at the register when I found another note, this time tucked under the cash drawer. It read, "You can't hide my heart raced." Who was doing this? I checked the security cameras, but they didn't show anyone unusual. Just the usual late-night customers. A few nights later, I found a third note in the storage room. This one said, "I know your secrets." I was starting to get really scared. I hadn't told anyone about the notes, but now I was constantly on edge, looking over my shoulder. The store felt different, like it was closing in on me. Strange things started happening. The lights would flicker for no reason, and items would fall off the shelves even when no one was near them. One night, the automatic doors kept opening and closing by themselves. It felt like I was losing my mind. I decided to tell my boss about the notes. He listened but didn't seem too concerned. He said it was probably just some bored teenager playing a prank. He promised to check the security footage more carefully and told me not to worry. But the occurrences only got worse. One night, I was in the back room counting inventory when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I quickly finished my task and went back to the front of the store, trying to stay in well-lit areas. Then, the notes started appearing at my house. I found one slipped under my front door that said, "I'm closer than you think. I called the police." But they said there wasn't much they could do without any real evidence of who was behind it. I installed cameras at my house and started being more cautious. But every night at the store felt like torture. The notes kept coming, each one more threatening than the last. "Soon and you'll pay" were the latest ones. I was barely sleeping and constantly on edge. One night, I found a note taped to the inside of my car windshield. It was chilling to know someone had been that close. The note said, "Tonight I didn't know what to expect, but I was terrified." I went to work that night with my heart pounding. I kept checking the cameras and looking out the windows. Around midnight, the power went out. I grabbed a flashlight and tried to stay calm, but then I heard a tapping on the front door. I shone the light, but all I saw was a figure disappearing into the darkness. The power came back on, and I found the final note on the counter. It said, "This isn't over. I called the police again," but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of anyone. I quit my job at the convenience store the next day. The experience left me shaken and paranoid, always wondering who was behind the notes and why they targeted me. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it really wasn't over.